With its 800+ mile long border with Russia, Finland is one of the countries most at risk of future invasions or acts of aggression. But the Finns are prepared. Not only do they have an exceptionally strong military in relation to their country's size and population, they're also investing in some game-changing new hardware. Hardware like the next generation ARVE 155mm mobile coastal artillery system, which could play a major role in any potential clashes with the Russian Baltic fleet. Here's a closer look at how it all works. The ARVE system is essentially comprised of a 155 GH-52 howitzer mounted onto a Sisu E13TP 8x8 all-terrain truck. That might sound simple enough, but looking at the performance metrics of this impressive new coastal cannon, it becomes clear just how powerful it could be. With its 52 caliber barrel, the ARVE can hit targets up to 25 miles, 40 kilometers away, using base bleed ammunition. It boasts a speedy fire rate too. In just the first 15 seconds of commencing fire, it can launch 3 rounds, with a maximum rate of 8 rounds a minute and a sustained rate of 2 rounds every minute. Deployment is rapid too. From the moment the truck comes to a stop, it takes just a minute and a half to set up the cannon and fire the first round. Since the cannon is situated at the rear of the vehicle, the ARVE is equipped with a strong spade-like system, which is lowered into the ground to secure the unit in place and transfer most of the recoil force into the earth, so the truck doesn't jolt and judder around on each blast. And once the fire mission is complete and the truck is ready to move on somewhere new or retreat to safer ground, it can be mobile again in just 45 seconds. The cannon's elevation angle can be adjusted from -3 degrees up to +60 degrees, giving it a firing arc of -90 degrees to +50 degrees. All adjustments are made manually, and the cannon also has manual laying and reloading. On the one hand, that could be seen as a downside, since it means that the system relies on human workers. On the other hand, it also means that the cannons are cheaper to make and maintain, since they don't have any built-in automatic reloading technologies or similar systems. In total, the system carries up to 24 rounds of complete ammunition. The rounds are stored safely in external boxes, mounted along the body of the 8x8 all-terrain truck. And speaking of the truck, it boasts a 500 horsepower engine with a rapid peak speed of over 60 miles per hour, more than 100 kilometers per hour. That's very impressive considering the weight of the equipment on the truck's back, as the whole system at full capacity has a maximum combat mass of approximately 28 tons. Measuring up at more than 37 feet in length, 11.5 meters, the truck can cover a lot of ground. With a full tank of gas, which is around 400 liters in total, it has a maximum range of more than 370 miles or 600 kilometers. Now here's what all those stats and figures means in real terms. For one thing, this system is fast. An operating team can drive it to a strategic location, start firing on targets less than 2 minutes later, and then pack up and hit the road again in less than a minute. That's so important in modern combat, as enemy forces respond faster than ever. In a conflict with the Russian Baltic Navy, for example, the Finns wouldn't want to hang around too long in any one position, or waste minute after minute preparing their cannon to fire. They need to relocate from point to point quickly and efficiently, continuing to rain down fire on targets without giving the Russian forces a chance to lock on and blow the ARVE away with destroyers or air support units. Second, the ARVE is exceptionally mobile. Its range and top speed have already been noted, but it's also worth mentioning that this system is more than capable of tackling tough terrain too. It can ford water obstacles like streams and shallow river crossings more than 3 feet deep, and it's also capable of scaling gradients of up to 30 degrees, allowing it to reach higher ground. That level of mobility is important because looking closely at the geography of the Finnish coastline, there's a lot of rocky, uneven ground here, with difficult terrain that will pose a real challenge to the likes of tanks and many armoured vehicles. The Finnish military needs highly mobile units in this area that can reliably move back and forth along the coast to different firing locations without the risk of getting bogged down along the way. The ARVE system is also destructive. The 155mm howitzer cannons mounted on these systems are immensely powerful, capable of firing large explosive rounds that can obliterate targets at long range. In a clash with the Russian Baltic fleet, for example, the ARVE coastal cannons could, theoretically, fire on a range of Russian naval vessels, from destroyers to frigates, corvettes, landing craft, or patrol boats. They would give the Finnish forces a big edge in terms of defending not only the country's coastline, but the waters of the Baltic Sea. And looking at what Finland has been working with in terms of coastal defences up to this point, it's even easier to see what a big upgrade the ARVE could turn out to be. For years, the country's coastal artillery arm had to rely on old towed Soviet 152mm howitzers and 130mm M46 field guns. These systems were eventually retired when Finland's mobile coastal artillery arm was disbanded, sometime in the mid-2000s. All that was left behind to guard the country's coasts were fixed 130mm installations. Fixed installations have clear downsides in that they're more easy targets for enemy forces, and they can't be repositioned as needed to strike strategically positioned enemy units. So, in recent times, especially with the ever-present concern of Russian aggression, the Finnish Navy has been looking into replacing its old fixed units with brand new mobile systems capable of using NATO standard ammunition. That's where the ARVE comes into play. It was created by Patria, which is one of the key defense providers in Finland. The Finnish government holds a 50.1% stake in the company, and since 2022, Patria has revitalized its operating model to become more efficient and productive. In 2023, it signed an agreement with the American defense manufacturer Lockheed Martin to begin work on Finland's future fleet of F-35 fighter jets. And the company has also been working on an array of its own private projects and innovations, including the ARVE. Indeed, initial designs for this system were released as far back as 2015, and Jukka Holkeri, the executive vice president of Patria's global division, confirmed in a statement, "This concept has been around for quite some time. We never publicized it, but it was there. Both the truck and the gun were there." So, in effect, all Patria had to do was find a way to combine the truck and the weapon for efficient and effective military operations. But the ARVE might have never existed if not for Russia. In 2017, the Finnish military decided to use the South Korea K9 Thunder as its self-propelled howitzer of choice. That put a temporary end to the ARVE project, as Finland no longer intended to create its own self-propelled system, simply buying and using the South Korean cannons instead. Then in early 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine and everything changed. Suddenly, Finland was put on high alert. If the Russians had the audacity to march into Ukraine and claim parts of the country as its own, could it not do the same to Finland? The Finnish military suddenly felt a pressing need to modernize its equipment and bolster its defenses. And as Finnish leaders observed the events in Ukraine, they quickly saw the immense power and value of self-propelled artillery. In particular, the French Nexter Caesar systems, which have been continuously supplied to Ukraine over the course of the war so far. The Finns realized that their defense capabilities would be vastly improved if they were able to create their own self-propelled howitzers in a similar style to the Caesar systems. So, in 2024, work on the ARVE officially resumed, with Patria's teams working tirelessly to prepare a prototype. They succeeded, and the first ARVE prototype was shown at Patria's Arctic event 2025, which was held in Lapland in March of this year. At that event, Patria also showed off some of its other hardware, including the Nemo and Tremos mortar systems, drones and armoured vehicles, with various live fire exercises conducted in the region's snowy forest terrain. The Nemo system is already in production and has been exported to several countries, including Slovenia, the UAE and Saudi Arabia. For now, the Tremos is set for delivery to the Finnish army in 2025, indicating it's entering production but not yet widely deployed. ARVE only exists as a prototype, but the technology clearly exists for Patria to start manufacturing multiple systems should it be contracted to do so. At this time, the Finnish Defence Forces have not made an official request for ARVE systems, but they are expected to show interest. If and when that interest comes, Patria will be ready, and it has several methods of manufacture to turn to. In an interview, Holkeri explained that the company could theoretically make more ARVE systems in an efficient and affordable way by actually repurposing existing guns. Alternatively, it could make new ones. That would cost more, but would potentially allow for larger scale production. Both solutions are feasible, says Holkeri. And even though Patria hasn't actually made any new guns for over 2 decades, a Patria representative is confident it would have no trouble restarting production if and when it needs to. We've got all the needed capabilities. While we haven't produced new guns for a while, we've been producing spare parts worth millions of euros during the last decade, and this includes all critical components. Now, those components include gun barrels, which are some of the trickiest parts to produce. In other words, Patria is positioning itself as ready to create new ARVE units largely independently, though some coordination with external suppliers may still be required for certain components or systems. And here's some even more exciting news. The ARVE is set to get even better in the future. Since it's still technically in the prototype stage of development, Patria has plenty of freedom to refine the ARVE design and explore ways in which it might become more efficient, destructive, and effective on the battlefield. The company has announced that it's looking into an array of potential upgrades. Those upgrades include an improved fire control system, which could perhaps help the unit in targeting enemy vessels or vehicles, calculating the correct trajectory of each shot, and hitting its target to a greater speed and precision, as well as a servo-controlled laying mechanism which could also aid the operating team when aiming at targets. Another possible upgrade to the ARVE could be the integration of either an automatic or semi-automatic loading system. This would effectively remove what could be seen as the ARVE's biggest weakness, a reliance on manual loading. With an automated system, there will no longer be a need for members of the operating team to reload the cannon in between each shot, which could lead to a faster firing rate and more efficient performance. All of these upgrades would make the ARVE even more lethal, particularly in coastal combat scenarios, where artillery units like this one often have to fire on moving targets and need to be as efficient and mobile as possible. At the same time, any upgrades to the design need to be assessed not only in terms of performance enhancements, but also cost. The ARVE system needs to be not just robust, but affordable. That's a big part of Finnish military strategy on the whole. The country has consistently demonstrated a remarkable capability to maintain a strong armed force while keeping its overall spending relatively low. Indeed, for many years, the country's defense budget was less than 2% of its GDP, though this has changed since the Ukraine invasion, with Finland now planning to increase spending to at least 3% of its GDP on the military by 2029. But even with this added expenditure, the Finns won't want to spend more than they need to on the ARVE. It's up to Patria then to make sure any changes they make to the design strike the right balance between budget and performance. Given the company's strong track record, plus the fact that it already supplies all towed 155mm guns used by the Finnish Defence Forces, except the South Korean K9 Thunders, it should have no trouble doing this. For now, it says the next steps are to test the ARVE with industry-level live-fire trials and mobility exercises. So it may be a little longer before any ARVE units deploy along the Finnish coast, guarding the waters of the Baltic Sea. But if and when the ARVE enters full-scale production, it should prove a big boon to the country's maritime defences and a major deterrent for any Russian aggression in the area. This matters because Russia has had a continuous naval presence in that part of the world for several centuries now, with its Baltic fleet established way back in 1703. The fleet is headquartered in Kaliningrad, the small Russian enclave that sits apart from the main body of the country, bordered by Lithuania to the north and east and Poland to the south, with nearly 90 miles of coastline looking out onto the Baltic Sea. Russia is secretive about the size and capabilities of this fleet, but in 2022, records show that it had at least 52 surface warships, including 4 cruise missile-armed Steregushki-class corvettes, plus a Kilo-class submarine and an array of support vessels. It also featured 2 Buyan-class corvettes, which are believed to be capable of launching both conventional and nuclear warheads to almost any location across the Baltic region. Since then, some ground forces from Kaliningrad may have been redeployed to Ukraine, but the naval component of Russia's Baltic fleet remains largely intact. But regardless of its current size or capacity, it represents a real threat to the countries in that area, including the 3 Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, and northern European nations like Finland and Sweden. Those countries need to be ready for anything, and innovations like the ARVE should have an important impact. Russia's fleet could be dramatically weakened by these cannons and would, at least in theory, be less likely to even make any sort of move in the waters near the Finnish coast. In the meantime, while work continues on the ARVE, Finland isn't simply sitting idly by. It's making a raft of other improvements to its defense capabilities. For example, there's the previously mentioned increase in military spending. This shows how committed the country is to not just meet NATO's spending targets, which are set at around 2% of each member nation's GDP, but to go much further, spending whatever it feels necessary to protect its people and its land. In total, Finland has pledged to spend around 3.7 billion euros over the next 4 years, and much of those funds will go towards modernising its armed forces, bolstering its border defences, securing critical functions, and investing in new innovations, hardware, and other research projects. Additionally, Finland has started construction on an almost 125-mile, 200-kilometre-long fence along its eastern border with Russia. Barbed wire will run along the top of the fence, which will be over 14 feet tall, and it will also be equipped with the likes of lights, sensors, surveillance cameras, and possibly even AI technology to help spot any humans attempting to cross. This won't deter any military action, as tanks and armoured vehicles could easily blow holes in the fence and roll right through, but it will help to limit the risk of instrumentalised migration, a possible strategy in which Russia could send migrants over the border into Finland to cause chaos and disruption or exert political pressure on the country's government. So far, more than 20 miles of fence have been constructed, and Finland claims that the project will be complete by 2026. Finland has also invested in the development of a new border security information system as part of its Ravallu 3 project. The new system will be deployed and replace the existing one over the course of a 3-year period from 2025 to 2027. This will give border security access to more surveillance data to keep a closer eye on any and all activities along the border. On top of that, Finland is acquiring new Terva-class patrol vessels to patrol its coastline and is procuring Bombardier Challenger 650 aircraft, modified by the Sierra Nevada Corporation, to replace its old Dornier 228 surveillance aircraft. It's also purchased drones and put them into action along the border, providing a bird's-eye view of the landscape so it can monitor any movements on the Russian side. Plus, since it officially joined NATO in April 2023, Finland has been able to take part in numerous military training and preparedness exercises alongside its fellow member nations. In late May 2025, for example, Finnish forces were involved in the Swift Response 25 exercise, which also featured troops from the US, UK, Poland, France, Germany, and others. In total, around 25,000 personnel played a part in the exercise, representing 29 allied nations. They took part in practice paratrooper missions, live-fire exercises, missile launch tests, and more, not only getting them ready for any future conflict in the area, but also sending a clear message to the Kremlin. NATO is united and more than ready to take action in the Baltic area and beyond, should it feel the need to do so. Now, take a look at our in-depth video into the Finnish military to see how and why it's such a serious force to be reckoned with, even for Russia, or watch our recent report on how Russia might be preparing to cross the border and invade Finnish territory sometime in the not-so-distant future. And be sure to subscribe to the military channel for ongoing reports of the Russia-Ukraine conflict and other important events across the globe.